What would happen if you stopped being your own worst enemy? Are you constantly talking yourself out of the big things that you actually want to do? If you're feeling a little stuck right now, let's figure out why. A being profile assessment and a private one-on-one debrief will help you uncover the root cause so you can finally move forward. Head over to CherylPFisher.com/coaching for all the information. This spring, the first 5 people to use the promo code PROFILE50 will have a 50% discount on the profile and debrief. See you there. Have you ever thought about the fact that plants not only are healthy for us because of oxygen and beauty, but plants also could teach us something about needing the right environment for really the best growth and about fighting off problems and predators? Well, today we're going to talk about that, and I think you're going to be fascinated. Here we go. Welcome to Mind Your Midlife, your go-to resource for confidence and success, one thought at a time. Unlike most advice out there, we believe that simply telling you to believe in yourself or change your habits isn't enough to wake up excited about life or feel truly confident in your body. Each week, you'll gain actionable strategies and, oh my goodness, powerful insights to stop feeling stuck and start loving your midlife. This is the Mind Your Midlife podcast. Here we are. It is another Changemakers episode. And today's Changemaker has really done something very cool from a situation that she did not want to happen in her life at all. And, that hits us in so many different ways. For her, it was professional. It could be professional, personal. It could be so many different things. She has really found something cool. So my guest today, Mary Rothwell, is a licensed therapist. She is also a podcast host of the podcast No Shrinking Violets, and I was a guest on her podcast. You can look for the episode called From Complaints to Confidence and go check it out. I'll put the link in the show notes. She is also a speaker and an author who helps women honor their essential nature and live in alignment with their true purpose and strength from within. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is how she went from working in higher education and mental health to launching a book very soon called Nature Knows, Growing and Thriving Through the Wisdom of Plants. What an amazing transformation. I'm excited for you to learn from Mary's experiences. Welcome, Mary. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to talking.
I am too. And I already know a little bit of your story, so I know this is going to be a great conversation. So we're here doing a Changemakers conversation with the idea of really sharing with anyone who's listening that you can make major changes, do what you want to do, and it doesn't matter if you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s at the time you do it.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us the story of how you ended up doing what you're doing now.
Okay. So it started with something totally unexpected. And I think that's when I hear other people's stories, that's like my favorite part because you don't see it coming. So I worked in higher education in mental health for probably 32 years. And I loved my job. I worked at a major university and I was part of the counseling center and I loved young adults. It was my favorite thing to do. And I had a lot of freedom. So I got to sort of build programs, but also do individual counseling. And I was just in the sweet spot. And there was a staff change. And what that meant was I had a new supervisor. After having someone who was in the field for a long time, he was very respected, was one of those people as a boss that would tell me, encourage me to do whatever I want. He was very encouraging. Even if I said I'm going to go stand on the street corner with a sandwich board, he would be like, well, if you want to try it. just that support was great. The change was like whiplash, created a department I didn't recognize. And it became a situation where I knew in my body something wasn't right. But I think when we encounter situations like this or people like this, your brain is trying to catch up. And I think, especially as women, we're like, wait a minute, I must be able to do something different to make this better. And when we have somebody in our life that doesn't treat us the way we treat other people, I think we often think that has to be me. So it got to the point where it had been months, and I started to recognize, like, I was sick in my stomach. I was getting headaches. It was just not good. So I just made the choice, I have to leave the job. And so what I ended up doing, because I had been in public school, so I had a good retirement system. In that system, you can retire a little bit early and still get an annuity. So I decided I'm going to retire and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do. Well, my whole identity was gone. And I also was I was in a situation where I was just ready to get married again. So there's a whole other change. So a lot of things were shifting.
Yeah.
I tried to keep doing what I had been doing. So tried to find another part-time position at a college, which I did. It was fine. And then kept trying to create a business that in the way that other people did. Well, as a therapist, you don't really ever get paid what you should. So when you're put in a marketing situation and, you're trying to ask people, it was just really uncomfortable. It didn't feel right. It was a mismatch. So I went through a lot of iterations of what I wanted to do. And I think what ended up happening is somebody said at one point to me, you might have to abandon the identity that you had. And that was really hard because 32 years as this person.
Yeah.
But gradually that's what I did. And so now I'm on quite a different path, combining my love of nature and that I understand that if we connect with that part of ourselves, then we just can move into this next phase of just recognizing who we are, because we used to know that before society came in and told us who we should be, looking to, this is going to sound crazy, but looking to the world of nature and plants to actually help us figure out how to stay well, create boundaries, and all of that. So that is the path I'm on, which is so different than where I was 3.5 years ago.
Fantastic. There's like 10 different ways I want to go from that. So let's just kind of circle back for just a second on the previous situation, because you said a couple of things that I think I want to make sure that people really hear.
Mm-hmm.
Number one is it sounds like one person can really make a big difference. Unfortunately, this
Mm-hmm.
was a negative one. And then you trusted yourself to realize it wasn't you, even though you said something along the lines of, we often blame ourselves. And I just want to stick with that for just a second, because I fully agree with you that when things go wrong or different than we thought, often our first thing is to try to figure out what we did wrong, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine it was a challenge for you to get through that or get past that.
It was a huge challenge because here's the other part of that. I think we already know in our body that we're not wrong, but we've been so socialized to think, oh, it must be me. So what happened was I sensed it in my body first. That's when I started to dread going to work, feeling sick. But what was happening at work is I would keep trying harder. And so it was this conflicted message. Here's what I want you to do. And I was a doer. Give me the steps. I'm going to do it. I followed the steps. And at the end of that, it was, this isn't what I asked for. And I was like, I've been successful for 32 years. I know that this is not me. But at the same time, I kept trying harder and harder to figure out what I should be doing until I realized this is insanity to keep staying. It was like a treadmill. I was never getting anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually have very personal identification with what you're saying, because my very first job out of grad school, I had multiple bosses. I worked in a firm where there were partners that would lead projects, but the one I always kept getting assigned to, I mean, truly was horrifying. And it was the same thing. Like I would do what he asked and it would be wrong. And then I would do it again, however he asked, and it would be wrong. And I left that job after about a year and a half. And it took me, I would say, years to get over the anger and just I don't even know what to call it, the stress from that. It was really, really hard. And I feel like you're sort of describing the same thing.
Yeah. It took a long time for me also. And I will tell you that not that long ago, I had the opportunity to interact with this person, and I intentionally did because I wanted to see what it felt like. And I realized I had moved through it because I felt nothing. So, yeah, you can get there. It just, I mean, I went to therapy for sure to process it.
Yep. Very good, healthy choice. Absolutely. And so the lesson really is I think we need to trust ourselves. And you said you kind of knew it in your body, and I think we do, and then we don't always listen to that gut feeling or, whatever however we feel it in our body. It's different ways for different people.
Hmm.
Okay. So, I was going to ask you, as you were starting to revamp into your current focus on nature, and we'll talk more about that too. And you're a podcaster as well. What were some of the struggles and the worries that you went through kind of during this change process?
I think one of the big ones, I had always supported myself my whole life, even in my first marriage. He was an organic farmer, so I was the one really making the income. Well, when you start a business, and for me, I'm going to say it was floundering, even though I think if you look from the outside, I did a little private practice on the side to kind of keep things going, but I wasn't making the money I was. So I think there was a lot of insecurity around that, even though my new husband was like, it's our money. And I'm like, but no, I have my own career. So I think that was my first struggle. And then there's no rule book to have your own business. And when I worked for someone else, it was very clear how to be successful. When you work for yourself, the competing messages of you have to do this on social media or you have to do this with your email list. And all of it felt so disingenuous that I felt like I was in one of those mazes where you're like, oh, this is the way. And then you hit the wall and then you turn around and you go, I must have done that 17 times. And I think what ended up happening was if I trusted what I felt, then it worked. Also, I think people tend to give you the idea that it happens overnight. We see these people that are successful and that's what we see, but we don't see all the, I'm going to say failures,
Yeah.
because to me, a failure is just a learning experience. So I think it was also this idea of if I'm good at this, I should know just how to do it. But I never built a business before. So there was also a lot of self-judgment.
Yes, the shoulding on yourself. I should know how to do it. I should be able to build it fast. Yes. 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 So how did you get through that then? Just continually trying, propping yourself up, trying again?
I think that really was a big part of it. But I will say that my husband was very encouraging because he would be my sounding board. He's in the world of business. So he never really told me, I think you should do this, but he would listen. And at one point, I was trying to build an online course. I taught for most of my life as part of my work. I can teach. Can I build an online course? Yeah. Do I really want to market that? No. And he was actually the one that said, the more you talk about this, the more it sounds like it's not what you want to do. And so I think that message just sort of kept coming from different directions that if you trust what you're good at and what you like, you're going to get there. And so it was just a matter of kind of whittling off the pieces that I felt I tried it, didn't work. And I think forgiving yourself, because sometimes you buy a course to learn something and you get partway through it and you're like, this isn't helping me. As my husband says, that's a sunk cost, right? You got to let it go. So I think along the way, there was a lot of sort of forgiving myself for running into those walls. And because I love to create and I really love to impact the lives of people, I just started to look at these different ways. And now I feel like I'm finally on the path that actually leads through the maze.
So inspiring, really. So inspiring. I mean, I knew our story was going to feel kind of similar, but I think I saw this thing on social media the other day. I don't know who shared it, so I can't say who it was, but it said something like every successful woman entrepreneur either has a supportive spouse or partner or doesn't have one. And I was like, I guess that's true. It does matter. It does matter.
Oh,
And so the fact that he was supportive of you the whole time and helping you through this is so powerful.
yeah,
Amazing.
I agree with that because I'm a person who I like a lot of solitude. And like I said, I always sort of made my own way career-wise. So it was different for me to have a spouse that was supportive. That wasn't my experience the first time. So I could see if you had somebody who was questioning your choices, we already question our choices, right? So he was just very steady, very consistent, and let me sort of find my way there. So I can totally see that if there was no one, it would probably be harder, but you would just have to sort of work with yourself or find your peer group. Yeah, an unsupportive spouse, I think, or partner would that's sort of a recipe for not being able to get there.
Yeah. I fully agree. The other thing that was coming to mind was that you have a little bit of an advantage, maybe over some of us who are trying to make a change and sort of make our way in some type of new world, because you do have this mental health and therapy background. Because for me, when I left the safety net of always having somebody tell me what to do, which I heard you mention, and I went into now I have to figure it out myself and I have to make goals and I have to get myself to do it and think bigger. That was the time when I started looking at self-development and mindset and all of that. Before that, I thought all that was ridiculous. So I'm thankful for you that you at least had that to fall back on. Maybe it made your path a little bit quicker. I don't know.
Well, so in one sense, being able to sort of have a little private practice on the side and get some income, yes. But I think I would say anybody, mental health therapist, psychologist, everybody struggles with the same mindset issues, the same imposter syndrome. So, I think there was still that part of it. But yeah, I think having something that right now, especially someone with a license in, counseling, we can we can get an income. But I think then it becomes for me, it was like, well, don't just do that because you can.
Mhm.
Keep trying to do the next thing and let that just be one of the supports for you.
Okay, before we get into the second part of this episode, I want to share with you a little morning habit that's been an absolute game changer for me. At this point in life, you've heard me say this. I don't want to add 10 steps to my morning or 15 steps to my evening. I just want to feel good and I want to make good decisions. For over 2 years now, I've been starting my day with a duo of products that I put right in my big water bottle that gives me 12 servings of veggies, probiotics, vegan collagen builder, and healthy energy made from green tea. It's so easy, I even take it traveling wherever I'm going. So, if you know that you could use a little boost, check out Green Synergy Elixir and Energy Fizz together in a pair at CherylPFisher.com/recommendations. Yeah, very well said. I like that. Because you want to do the thing that really lights you up. Absolutely. And so, on that note, you have a book coming out. And so, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing now, what it looks like, where you're headed.
Okay. So I was a master gardener for 15 years and I am a plant geek. I just love it. So there was a time when that world and my life as a therapist started to be like one of those Venn diagrams. It started to cross more and more because I would see plants struggle and I would start to think about what is it that they're missing. So if you have houseplants or you look at even a tree in the landscape and it's not doing well, first of all, you can see that, but you never think, my God, that is a lazy plant. It's not trying hard enough. But when we think about ourselves, the first thing we do is, as we talked about in the beginning, we blame ourselves. So I started to think about this and I started to think more about how we're like plants. And the more I thought about it, the more I started to use examples with my therapy clients. And after I left my job in the college, my private practice is really women in midlife. So this was a very different type of pun intended, soil to kind of fertilize because there were so different analogies I could use. So I think it started to resonate with them. So if I would talk about light as being, hot and really intense, and that can be sort of like life as an extrovert. Like some people really like a lot of that heat or they like a stressful environment because they function better. But then there's a shade person where they like kind of coolness, maybe some distance. And I think about roots. There's all different kinds of roots and some of them are deep. Some of them are shallow, but they pull in the nutrients if they're healthy, or the soil that we're living in, or the climate. You can't plant a plant in a place where the winter is so cold it kills it. But yet we try to survive in these environments that we're not built for that. So I just started with all these ideas and came up with this idea of essential nature, because even two daisies or two sunflowers or two ferns, same species, different plant. They're going to thrive differently because their genetics have been impacted by whatever their seeds came from. So we can look at our family and think they're all thriving at doing this job or in this town. And we feel like, what is wrong with me? Well, you just need something different. So our essential nature comes from who we really are. Like when you're a kid, you know what you like until somebody tells you that's weird or what's wrong with you. And so that's where our environment comes in that tempers sort of that essential nature we're born with. But if we can connect and really think about that, and I do that 8 ways in my book, we talk about climate and light and soil. And there's also a couple chapters on pests, insects, and how do we then create boundaries in the same way a plant does? Because a plant doesn't apologize. It sends out volatile organic compounds, which repel the pest. It also alerts its friend plants that there's something wrong. So the plant world just naturally creates or tries to find a place it can thrive. And I think if we can just think more like that or live more like that, we don't need to apologize and we don't need to question why we're made the way we are. Then we can just start to really pull what we need from our environment and fully thrive.
Oh, that's fascinating. Truly. I love plants. And I'm sure if you're listening and you have a house full of plants like I do, all of a sudden your attention is piqued because I have plants in every room. I believe plants are really healthy, but I never took it into this metaphor. Is that fair to
Huh?
say? Where
Yeah.
we're sort of looking at ourselves as a living organism that can be learning from all these lessons. I'm fascinated. How are you incorporating now your book and all of this that you've learned and you've created into your business? What does that look like?
Well, the business now is quite different. I will be closing my private practice because I don't know if people know, but when you're a therapist, you can only work with people that you're licensed to work with in your own state. And I started to build coaching, which I love.
Mhm.
And so the book is sort of the basis of keynotes, like I do training for corporations and nonprofits. And, using this idea, I do workshops where everybody gets a little plant and we sort of use that. But also, I have a 3-month membership right now called Build and Burn. And the reason I call it that is because when something burns intentionally, like Native Americans would burn prairies, because what allows that to happen then is seeds that were dormant get a chance to grow. So if you
Mm.
burn and then build, it's like, let's take out all the things that aren't serving you and then let's build the next thing. So I do some coaching, speaking, and of course, once my book comes out, I'm hoping to do just some book tours and talks on that too.
Fantastic. I didn't know that about dormant seeds. I did know that burning is not always necessarily a terrible thing for cropland, but I didn't
Mhm.
know how. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So, what is your favorite part about what you're doing now?
Ooh, my favorite part is that it takes people a minute to be like, "What are you talking about?" Like plants and we're but then when they start to make the connection, what I love about that is I can often see them just expand like, "Okay, like I am nature." And I also just love nature in general, so I think the more we can get people connected to that, the more I think is good for not just us, but the world. And I'm actually certified in forest therapy too. So I think being out there, when you talk about your houseplants, you know, all the chemicals coming off those are so healthy. That's one
Mhm.
of the, we don't even know that. So I think the more we can get out of tech, away from screens, back to nature and connect to just that part in ourselves, that is what I love, that I'm just doing what I really believe in and I can see that it makes a difference for people.
That's fantastic. And I'm going to take a little swerve here and ask you to tell us a bit more about forest bathing, because I heard this term when I was speaking with someone about grounding. And we were more focused on grounding, but forest bathing sounds a bit odd, but it's really not, right?
No, I think we literally take that term bathing, but think about it as immersion. So forest immersion. And basically, when you are in nature, and you don't have to go into the middle of the woods, I want to say that first, because I think a lot of us now have a little bit of this unease with nature. You can find your favorite tree on your way to work or in the park or in your backyard. You can start with just putting your hand on the bark of the tree. Being connected in your senses, that's a little microcosm of forest bathing because you're starting to connect to a being that goes deep into the earth. And the other part of it is if you aren't near a forest, you're already forest bathing, Cheryl. You're doing that because you have plants in your house. And that is one of the ways you can, quote, do forest bathing if you're in an urban setting or maybe you have a situation, maybe you're in a wheelchair, or you have mobility issues. You may not be able to get into the middle of a forest or to a tree, but you can do some of these things because those phytochemicals, you still get the benefit. So it's basically being in nature as much as you can be, observing, touching, smelling, like just being in that experience because the research is there's realms of research that it helps ADHD in kids, it helps us focus, it immediately lowers anxiety. Even if you have a tree you can see out your window at work, it's going to help your anxiety. So there's just so many benefits to it and you can sort of immerse yourself to the degree that you're able or you're comfortable and then build from there.
That's fantastic. And I actually do have a tree right outside my office window that I look at all the time. So there you go.
Yes. See, we instinctively do it. We just don't know, or we think, we're so tech oriented now. We think nature is like we're going to get stung by a bee or all these things, but really we are drawn to it if we actually let ourselves recognize that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think everybody knows, well, I don't know if everybody knows, but I think most people probably know that plants absorb carbon dioxide. They produce oxygen, which is why I know they're good to have inside a house. But you're saying they're giving off more
Hmm.
compounds as
Yep.
well that are good for it.
Yes. Especially evergreen trees. So if you have a choice, there are different phytochemicals that come from like pine trees, evergreen trees. But the more you can just be in a situation where there might be a lot of different species also. And again, look at the ground. Like, look what is down there. What are the mosses? What are the other things? But I think a great place to start is just put your hand on the tree bark
Mm-hmm.
and just feel that. Some people say you can feel like sort of the energy in that tree. And I know that sounds really woo-woo, but we are nature. We're all nature. And nature does not exist in a vacuum. It's a community. And that's why we need community. Our hormones, oxytocin, we want to create a community. So we all need each other. And I think it's just, that's my tree hugger, granola, nature geek, that, just do those things. But I love that you're pointing out there's science to it. When we
Yeah.
can measure the air, and the most basic thing you said is oxygen. That's why we want a lot of plants around us.
Yeah. Fantastic. And it's just so easy. I thank you for making it easy because not everybody can just walk over to some woods and go through them, but
Exactly.
I love that. Okay. So, how can people find you online, find out more about your business, and maybe about your book launch?
Okay, so right now my website is being totally revamped. It's maryrothwell.net.
Okay.
And I'll have on there about my Burn and Build membership and, my speaking engagements and my options for keynotes. But if you want to get connected now, if you want to be on my launch team, and what that means is I just periodically send you fun stuff about my book. I just sent 2 cover designs designed by an artist for people to vote on. I'll send you audio of my book. So that is maryrothwell.net/launch team.
Perfect. Perfect. And I love the idea of a launch team for the book. That's fantastic. I did that when I relaunched the podcast a year ago. Had a little team of people who were listening and sharing and all of that. So even better to do it with a book. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing that I always ask is the one thing that you really want people to remember, because we all listen to podcasts while doing something else. We
Mhm.
can't remember everything.
Mhm.
So what would you say is really the key thing that somebody listening should take away from this episode?
I would say the key thing is that you have an essential nature, just like everything in nature, you are nature. So the way you were created is unique to you, and you are fine just the way you were created. You just need to reconnect to that knowing that you had. Like when you were a kid, you knew what you wanted to do, you knew what you liked, and it's okay. However, you were created, you are just as valid. Your existence is just as important as any other being. So I think being able to connect to that and give yourself permission to explore what you truly need, and
Mm,
then live that so that you can thrive either where you are, or you will create the environment that you really need to thrive.
fantastic. Yeah. Perfect thing to leave people with. Well, Mary, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, I loved it. Thank you, Cheryl.
Let's be honest. I always love every guest's one thing to remember. I always love them. And this one I love as well. This is an extension of the idea that if we really pause and think about it and feel what's going on and listen to the stuff rolling around in our heads, that's what being mindful and paying attention to our intuition is. And we usually know what to do or what to try. And it doesn't mean we're not going to make a mistake. And it doesn't mean maybe it's not going to work exactly how we thought. But trusting ourselves and continually trying what we really feel good about is so powerful. And I love that that's what Mary said as well. I hope that helps you in where you're headed along your path right now. And if you're trying to figure out what's going on in your life, I encourage you to grab my free resource, The Story Cycle, because if we can understand the emotion we're feeling at any given time, we can kind of go back behind that and figure out what are the thoughts running in our heads that are creating that emotion. Then we have the power to adjust if we want to. And that's what this starts walking you through. So go to CherylPFisher.com/story cycle. If you want to grab that, I'll put the link in the show notes, and check out CherylPFisher.com/coaching if you want to take it even a bit further. And in the meantime, keep remembering that midlife is your time to take just a little bit better care of yourself. Just a little bit better on the inside and on the outside makes all the difference.